Around 12 months ago, I was on the ground running at the IAA Munich Auto Show where I saw this car, the Mini Cooper Electric, for the very first time. And now I've come full circle. Today, we're going to be driving the Mini Cooper Electric for the first time on Aussie roads. Today, we're in Melbourne to drive a stack load of Minis, but in this video, I'm going to be focusing on the Cooper E and the Cooper SE. Mini has completely redesigned its hatch for 2024. It's riding on a completely new electric platform jointly developed with GWM, but is it as fun as it used to be? Well, today we're going to find out. But before we get started, make sure you like and subscribe as always to Chasing Cars. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by Budget Direct. So what exactly is the Cooper SE? Mini is in fact bringing two Cooper Electrics to Australia, one being the E and the other being the SE, which we are driving today. Pricing starts at $53,990 before on-road costs for the E, and steps up to $58,990 before on-road costs for the SE we have on test. The Cooper SE gets the larger of the two available batteries. The 54 kWh unit allows for an electric range of around 402 km WLTP, which is significantly higher than the outgoing model's 203 km of range. Propelling this electric Mini is a single electric motor on the front axle that produces 160 kilowatts of power and 330 Newton meters of torque. That's 25 kilowatts and 40 Newton meters more than the base car. To put things into perspective, this Cooper SE produces more kilowatts of power than the new petrol Cooper S. The new Mini Cooper also gets new styling inside and out. It's got new looks and new tech inside. Let's take a look inside the cabin and see what's changed there. So what's it like inside the new Mini Cooper Electric? This is my first impressions. I've been in this car sort of before, but it's nice to see a production version actually in the flesh. Look, it's a really nice cabin. It's very different to other cabins, mainly because of this like weave material that they've used all around the dash and the doors. I think it's cool. It's a little bit different and it should wear quite well with time. But the core focus of this car is the central touchscreen, which is a 240mm OLED unit. It runs all the infotainment, it runs all of the navigation as well as your phone calls. It also runs wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Now, the weird thing is that the Apple CarPlay comes up as a square. Square inside of a circle doesn't look particularly good, but hey, it'll be to some people's taste and you're just gonna have to live with it, unfortunately. Now, also you get a head-up display too, so you're not just relying on the central speedo there on the screen, you can see it straight through the head-up display. That's really handy, really cool. And I think more cars that are shifting away from the traditional cluster should at least have a heads-up display like this Mini Cooper. Now, in terms of overall comfort in the car, these seats are pretty good. They're leather-free. They feel a lot like leather, but they're very supportive. They're sort of sporty. I think it's a really comfortable place to sit, and I think you'd be able to drive long distances in this car with no problems whatsoever. Now, the steering wheel is good. It's got a nice finish to it, but it's just too thick. Like, especially at the top sort of 10 and 2 area, it's so thick, it's hard to get your hands around, which I think is just, it's very BMW. That's all I can say. And a thing I really love about Minis, and they've continued it with this one, is the little toggle switches. There's toggle switches for the experiences, so you can go through a range of different experiences, different vibes, I guess you could say, in the interior. If you put it in go-kart mode, it's got this cool sort of sound that plays. It's sort of like an electric petrol engine. But also you've got a little twist knob here to turn the car on and off, plus you've got your drive select as well. So all in all, I think it's really nicely done in here. It's a bit different. It's not quite as quirky as an EX30, but it's certainly getting there. So what's the new Mini Cooper Electric like to drive out on the open road? Well, we're in quite a fair bit of Melbourne traffic, but we're gonna see how this goes. The weather is turned quite sour, but this is the perfect time to be testing a new little performance hatch. It's not probably a complete hot hatch, but it's pretty close. First impressions of comfort, it's pretty good in here. These seats are nice and supportive, nice and comfortable, and they have enough bolstering to sort of keep you in if you did want to have a more spirited drive. And well, the steering wheel is another thing. It's very thick, it's very BMW-like, obviously, but it's almost too thick. It's kind of uncomfortable to use, and I'm not sure why they didn't go with a smaller wheel for this car, but you're gonna have to live with that if you buy one of these Mini Cooper Electrics. Now, in terms of performance, this car has a front-mounted electric motor that makes 160 kilowatts of power and 330 Newton meters of torque. And because it's electric, the torque is pretty instant. You put your foot down, and it makes some very interesting noises. Basically, the sound generator is pumping in different noises depending on what mode that you're in. I know you can have it in sort of very chill, relaxed mode, or you can have it in go-kart mode where things are a lot more racy sounding. It sounds a little bit strange, but very much like BMW electric cars at the moment. I'm not sure if these were done by Hans Zimmer, but it sounds a lot like that, but just Mini's version. So it is very wet, we've got to be careful, but we're going to do a little bit of a takeoff here just to see the performance. You can hear the sound of the electric symphony, as you'd like to call it, happening as I accelerate. It's quite a punchy thing, but you'll soon see what it's like. Off we go. Oh, a lot of wheel spin, but off we go. Woohoo! Yeah, it's got plenty of punch. It's what hot hatches would have had about maybe 10 years ago. And it's sort of like the same power as my Ford Focus that I used to have, my XR5 Turbo. This has got basically the same outputs, but it's just got that instant thrust from the electric motor that you just don't get in the combustion car. Now, what I love about Minis is the fact that they're small enough, they're convenient enough to be a great city car. But this car I've driven on the highway today, it's been really good, it's been very stable, and it's just a fun little thing. You can tell it's got all that energy in it, that energy underneath it in its systems. It's like a little rascal, and it just wants to play. Now, also worth noting with the driving experience is that you've got a nice little head-up display there, which is really good because you don't want to be looking down to the main screen all the time. I found that it's really good having the head-up display. It's what cars such as the Volvo EX30 are really missing, in that you have to take your eyes off the road and onto the screen to check how fast you're going. Sounds like a simple thing and something you get used to, but it's a bit annoying when you're jumping from car to car. We're going onto the highway again, let's test out the performance. There we go, that's 100. Very good, very, very good. Plenty of punch, enough for a daily drive. So we're on the highway now, it's all happening. The weather's turning quite sour, quite bad, but we're making the most of it. This is a good time to test this car. Now, I will note that on a wet day like this car is a bit of a handful. If you put your foot down on the accelerator, it does do quite a bit of wheel slipping, even with the traction control and everything just as normal, which is a little bit, not frightening, but it's a bit alarming. So you got to really take care, especially with any car in wet conditions. But this car just seems to be a little bit slippy, more than I was expecting. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention too was the regenerative braking on this car. It's really strange in that it's almost like an adaptive cruise style regen braking where it's measuring it off the car in front of you. But the regen changes depending, in seconds, from being really hardcore to not very hardcore at all, and I think it's a little bit off-putting. We also noticed a little bit of an issue where when you lift off the throttle, it actually adds a little bit of acceleration before you can start braking. It's just a really strange sensation, and this is the second Mini that I've driven today that's done that. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But I guess the thing that I really want to talk about that is important to the DNA of this car over so many years is fun factor. And if I had the chance to drive it on a really good road, I think it would be a barrel of laughs. It'd be a really fun time. I'd really enjoy being able to extract all that power on a twisty mountain road. I think that's where this car would really suit. It's a little bit too firm around town. It's kind of livable, but also a little bit uncomfortable at the same time. It's just teetering on the edge there. I'm not quite sure. But we will be doing a more thorough review of this car in the coming months, so make sure you stay tuned to the Chasing Cars website and our YouTube channel. I think one of the things too that's really impressed me with this car is, one, the range. This car has a claimed range of about 400 kilometers, which is a lot better than what it used to be. And two, it still has that fun factor. Yes, it's missing an internal combustion engine. Yes, it's not turbocharged or making pops and bangs and carrying on, but it has its own identity, and I think that's a great thing. A lot of electric vehicles aren't necessarily that fun to drive. They do fail in some of the key areas, but this car still is fun to drive, enjoyable, and quite characterful with all those sounds going on as well. Plus, it's got enough punch to keep you happy. So I think this will also bring in a new era of owners to the Mini family. Now that it's got a really good range, more than 200 kilometers, it'll be plenty for most people living inside or outside of the city, even in regional areas. They can have this car and do bigger kilometers, bigger distances with ease. So that's a big win. And I have to add about the price too. At about $59,000 before on-road cost, it's about the same price as a Cupra Born. Now the Cupra Born has rear-wheel drive and might be a little bit more fun, but I still think this is a good car for the money. Yes, it's a lot more than an MG4. Is it better than an MG4? I'm not quite sure if it is. That MG4 is a cracking good car, but this has its own DNA, its own characteristics, and I think you're gonna have just as much fun in one. You're just gonna have to pay a little bit more. So what are my final thoughts and first impressions on the new Mini Cooper Electric? Well, it's got decent range now, 403 kilometers WLTP. That's a big difference over the outgoing model's 200-ish kilometers range. So it's almost double. It's a really good thing to drive around town. It's a fun drive, an involving drive. It is a little bit on the firm side, but for the most part, this is a car that you can get in and have fun in every single day. But what are your thoughts on the new Mini Cooper Electric? Would you consider one? Would you buy one over something like a Cupra Born, for instance? Well, let us know down in the comment section below. And while you're there, make sure to like and subscribe as always to Chasing Cars.